This is the Trading Psychology Podcast. This is VP, creator of No Nonsense Forex and author of the book No Nonsense Forex Trading Psychology. And with me, as he is every week, it is the always sanguine Robb Reinhold.
Again, you keep using these words. I've heard this word before, and I should know what it is. I know I've actually looked this word up, but my brain can't get it. What is sanguine?
As you were doing that, I just typed in the definition. It means optimistic or positive, especially in an apparently bad or difficult situation.
All right. I will take that. But you've never seen me in a bad or difficult situation. I fall apart. I'm a mess.
Yeah, it's a bit of a good lead-in, actually, to this episode. And if you remember our Smart Kid episode from a very short while back, this is almost an addendum to that. I've been asked in the past, because I've mentioned on my YouTube videos, my ADD, my attention deficit disorder. And a lot of people, it turns out, in this game, Robb, also at least believe they, I don't know if they suffer from this is the right word, but we'll use that for now, and have wanted me to do either a blog or a whole dedicated video on this. And I just didn't feel like it really fit with what I was trying to do, but I think it fits here. And I know, just like the Smart Kid episode, this may not apply to everybody. I mean, we all like to think we're smart, but I don't think all of us think we have attention deficit disorder. So let's go ahead, before we get started, and define the terms. So the first thing to mention is a lot of people confuse ADD with ADHD. ADD is attention deficit disorder. ADHD is attention deficit hyperactive disorder. There's a very big distinction. If you want a good comparison, I have ADD. If Robb did have this, he would probably have had ADHD growing up, the way he describes himself. Robb, do you think that's fair, or have you been diagnosed with this? We never talked about it.
My daughter is convinced that I have ADHD, and she's like, Dad, you got to go online and take a test. And I'm like, yeah, I should take a test. And then I realize, I don't want to know. Like, I'm pretty happy with where I am. So, if I had it, great. If I didn't, great. It's who I am. So I don't see any need for me to label it at this point in my life.
Yeah, and people have to be really careful with it too, because I remember when I first had it, it wasn't a big thing. And then it became a bigger thing because pharmaceutical companies want to get kids hooked on Ritalin and Adderall. So it became a much bigger deal, and then it was often misdiagnosed for this reason, because we know the game that Big Pharma likes to play. So that was that. So that just made it worse, because then people thought I was just making it up as an excuse for not doing well in school or for always forgetting things, whatever the case was. So that was really frustrating. Adding to my frustration later in life was something you talked about when we put this episode together, Robb. I've also been told that I am somewhat on the spectrum. Now, when somebody says that, they're talking about the autism spectrum. And I'm like, no, that's something that just got made up in the last 10 years. I was never on it before. I don't really display a lot of those tendencies. I know kids that are full-blown and how they act in everyday life, and I am not like that at all. But Robb, you had a really interesting counterpoint to that. Do you remember what it was?
Absolutely. And this is it. We are all on the spectrum. Now look, the definition of a spectrum is that it goes from one end of the extreme to the other end of the extreme. So when we talk about the autism spectrum or any spectrum, you are on it somewhere. Wherever you fit on that spectrum, you're going to have those certain traits. And sometimes those traits are going to be really positive. Sometimes they might be negative. But we're all on the spectrum somewhere. We all have our little quirks. We all have our little weird things. For me, I'm not saying this is part of the autism spectrum, but for me, I have a terrible memory. I forget everything. I can remember every number I've ever seen in my life. That's not true. Not every number I've seen, but I'm really good with remembering numbers. But everything else, it's like I have kryptonite around me when it comes to remembering things. It is such a weakness. And that's the point I wanted to make about this episode, is that we're all on the spectrum of positives and negatives. You just have to accept who you are and learn how to trade in spite of it.
So by that explanation, Rob, I'd say ADHD might really apply to you, but that's not what we're here to do. First of all, if anybody tells you you're on the spectrum, understand something that took me a while to figure out. It's not a spectrum to where the whole thing is autism. Autism is one of the points on the spectrum. You might be on the left of it and not have it. You might be to the right of it, and then at that point it just becomes to what degree. So if that's what somebody says, don't take it as an insult. It just is what it is, and it's not really clearly defined. And so I want to get that out there, because when people would say it to me, I would almost get offended. But then I learned what it actually was, and I'm like, oh, okay, I see where you're going with it.
Thank you so much for clarifying what I was trying to say. And I remember having this conversation with my daughter, and I said, it really just drives me crazy that, we've come up with these terms, and we use these terms to where, let's say that we determined that autism was right here on the spectrum. Like, okay, we drew a line on the spectrum. Everyone to the right has autism, everyone on the left doesn't. Well, what about the person that's one to the left? And they're told, oh, you're quote, quote, normal, you should be fine. And then the person that's one to the right of that line, I hate these terms. I don't think they do anyone any good. Yes, I know that there are some people out there that can absolutely get some assistance and really life-changing either assistance or medication. And I understand as human beings we have to draw a line, but I just hate the thought that because of where we arbitrarily drew a line, the kid on the left and right of that line is going to be negatively affected. So again, I just hate that. I'm so glad you said what you said, that this term, I just hate that we draw a line in this spectrum. Everyone to the right is, quote, normal. Everyone to the left has autism. I hate it so bad, I want to get rid of it.
And whenever you hear about these spectrums or these meters or whatever it is, just remember two things. One, just like a lot of studies that are out there, there's almost always somebody with something to gain by the study or the spectrum saying a certain thing, i.e. pharmaceutical companies like we talked about before. So just remember, it's probably not super accurate for that reason, but also remember too that humans are usually the ones that create these things. Not usually, they're always the ones that create these things, and because of that, it's never going to be perfect anyway.
And with 8 billion people on the planet, the variety of personal traits is endless. It's endless. And so I hate this drawing a line. Everyone to the left is this, everyone to the right is this. It's such an ugly, clumsy way to look at it, but that's how we are as humans. We form groups, we make groups, we draw lines. I just hate that we do it. So let's just keep talking about the positives of this, and I'll rant and rave somewhere else.
And look, you know what? There's positives and negatives to all of it. And if you are somebody who is absolutely ADD or ADHD, I got people on my channel because I've gotten tons of correspondence from people who are full-blown autistic, from people with Asperger's. Let that shit fly. That is who you are. The sooner you come to grips with it is the sooner you can actually know what to do about it and leverage a lot of this stuff to your advantage, which we're going to talk about today. But if you're unsure if you have it, I can talk about the traits, at least personally, because a lot of these traits apply to me. And Robb doesn't think this applies to him as much, but he has some good examples to interject here as well. But I'm going to start with the obvious, and that is the difficulty focusing. We talked in the Smart Kid episode how people who are lateral thinkers, their brains don't go straight down the line where they need to go when you're learning something or doing something or tying your shoes. They go in all different directions because that's just how we're wired. And I think ADD embodies a lot of this too, and that's why we just can't hyper focus in on most things. The exceptions, which really kind of makes me question this, Robb, is if it's something that we're really interested in, then we hyper focus in to where our brains are just like supercomputers, to where we can focus in like nobody else, but only on that narrow band of things that we really take interest in. When it comes to literally everything else, we can't just suck it up and do the things we need to do. Our brains just simply won't allow it.
Yeah, I've noticed that is that there's a real disinterest outside of the things that you're really focused on. And look, this is like everything in life. It's advantages and disadvantages. And some of us have stronger characteristics than others in a whole bunch of different metrics that we take a look at. But we just have to look and see who we are. We all were born with some genetics, some good, some bad. We all went through some life experience, some good, some bad. And we right now are the totality of all of those things in this moment in time. Now look, a lot of our trading psychology podcast has been about rewiring a lot of those things that you don't really like or that you want to change. But who you are right here, right now is a totality of everything that's happened in your life with your genetic code, period. It is what it is. You got advantages and disadvantages. Let's move on from labels and let's just get into actually using them to become better traders.
But for the sake of describing these traits, Rob, I do want to put a label on the one person that you put on the outline as a really good example. Now, the question is, ADD or ADHD is probably there. When we talk about that spectrum, how far over is this guy? Because the way he was portrayed in the movie and the way he is real life on Twitter, it is pretty accurate, I would say. And that person is Michael Berry from the Big Short movie. Somebody who was brilliant in his own right and was able to come up with things that almost most of the world just never, ever saw and completely disbelieved and turned out to be right in the end after a long period of just completely eating shit for a good year or so. Where... I don't know. I hate to ask this question because we both hate the actual spectrum so much, but where would you put this guy? And how would you describe his own type of ADD?
I will use his own words. As he had a kid, and his kid was diagnosed with Asperger's at the time, which I know now they've pretty much gone away from that term. But he saw a lot of the traits of his child that they were noticing was traits of his. And so he figured he probably had Asperger's, which is on the autism spectrum. But just like anything, this gives him the ability, and you've been using the term lateral thinking, and I think this is the greatest showcase of lateral thinking, is that you're able to see things that other people don't see. You're able to look at so big picture that most people couldn't even get there to even comprehend what this guy saw in 2006 and 2007. So this lateral thinking is like a superpower. It's like a superpower that gives him the advantage to see something other people just can't see. That being said, very wide lateral thinking also means you probably have a very hard time in implementing things. And you can see that he didn't have the patience to wait. He got in very early. He sat through a whole bunch of pain. Ultimately, he was very right in the end and made a ton of money for being right in the end. But do you see how that big lateral thinking probably hurt him in the implementation of putting in his system and his plan?
I think it played a part. I don't think the movie did a great job of illustrating just how. But yeah, I think the actual implementation could have been handled a lot better. But yeah.
And then we look at the other side of linear thinking. So this is the hyperfocus of ADHD. All of a sudden, you're now hyper-focused to where you literally can't even see anything outside of what you're focusing on. And this is its other, again, real advantage. I mean, can you imagine having that kind of focus and developing systems and being able to just dive into something to where nothing else in the world matters and everything you're doing is you're so present. And again, this allows you, it's a superpower. It allows you to do these wonderful things, but it's also a disadvantage in the fact that you might get blindsided by the big picture stuff because you're so in the weeds that you don't have the opportunity to take a look back and say, oh, wait, maybe there's something I don't see because you're just so laser focused on what you're doing. So look, the cannot focus and hyper focus, in my opinion, they're both superpowers and kryptonite.
Yep, and at the end of the day, Michael Burry wasn't crazy. He was just early. But moving on, I do know that the way that doctors always described it to me is, we have two sides of our brains, obviously the left side and the right side. And I don't know which one it is. It's probably the left, but it's moving faster than the right side is. For people who don't have this, both sides are usually moving at the same speed. But for ADD kids, one is usually faster than the other. And the medication they would give you was built to regulate the speed at which both sides operate. And so I just want to put a little PSA out there. There were two main types. There was Ritalin and there was Adderall. Ritalin, I've heard, is not that great for you in the long term, causes side effects. I did not experience it. I took it for a good couple years. It was the best thing I ever put in my body. It was amazing. But I realized that I couldn't rely on it forever. So I eventually kind of phased it out of my own system. Now with Adderall, that stuff stuck around. I'm not sure you can even get Ritalin anymore, but you can Adderall. It's still very, very popular, especially with the younger generations. Problem is, it's got meth in it, and they've pretty much traced back the majority of methamphetamine users to kids who used to take Adderall at some point. And so if it is something you enjoy currently, I would do whatever you can to get yourself off of it. One, because it's not going to be there forever. Two, you can really go overboard with it. Three, it is the root cause of meth addiction later in life. And once you're there, meth addiction is pretty much terminal for most people. It just is. And that's not a pretty place. So now that I've said that, moving on to the issues this actually has with trading. We've alluded to it a little bit already, Rob. And the problem with trading is it does require focus. So that can be a bit of a problem, no?
Yes, there are some certain tasks that you have to be able to complete, like a journal. Like you have to be able to do journaling. Journaling was very difficult for me at first, not because of ADD, but maybe it is. Maybe that's why I had such a hard time journaling. So I had to figure out a way to journal in spite of everything about me hated journaling. So I actually went to paying someone to download all my statements and put it into a journal. I did that for a little bit of time. And then once they got to where you could just automatically download your trades and throw it into a journal, then all of a sudden I can do that. And so I just put something on the end of every month, download journal, download it, throw it in, and my journal is up to date. Obviously, in the beginning, you want to be a little bit more interactive with your journal, writing a lot of your personal thoughts at the moment. But again, find a way that you can do that. Some people like to write by hand. One of the coolest things in one of our trading summits that we have every year, one of our traders had this notepad that she was writing on. And I was so interested in it because I also like technology. And it was called a remarkable tablet. And you wrote handwritten notes. But this tablet took those handwritten notes and basically turned it into a digital worksheet and digital notes. It was really cool. Have you ever seen that before, Patrick?
I'm seeing it with AI nowadays, forms of that, but before that I did not know.
So I was talking to our trader and she's like, I just can't do like spreadsheets. I can't do Excel, like something in my brain. I have to hand write it out. So she was able to get this device. It was pretty expensive. I looked into it about $500 or $600. But she was able to write out handwritten notes, and it basically put it into Excel spreadsheets for it to be usable. I just thought it was a really great way to identify something about yourself that you can't do, and then figure out a way that you can still accomplish that task with a use of technology, hiring someone else, some way to where you can actually get that task done.
Yeah, so a few things on that. One, and anybody who knows me and my channel this is gonna be a repeat of what I say all the time. But yeah, journaling is probably the single most important thing you need to do. On top of that, it's probably the single most important thing you need to do that does not get done by 98% of traders out there. And why don't we want to do it? Well, as Mr. ADD and ADHD over here can tell you, we don't want to do it. It's not part of trading that interests us. It's extra work, and on top of that, like we talked about in the Smart Kid episode, we don't think we have faults. We don't want to be told, or we don't want to expose the fact that we've done something dumb, possibly. And that's the most important part of your journal, is that comments section that says what you've done wrong. So you can go back and you can see over time if you're writing in that comments section more or if you're writing in it less. And if you're learning from the same mistakes or if you're making completely new ones. Like, you need this information. It's so vital, but it's an extra step that doesn't involve making money or risk. So it's not exciting to us. And it's just not fun, and it exposes our weakness. And so there's so many reasons why people just simply don't want to do it. I will say, Rob, you mentioned that lady in your example. This is something women have no problem with. Women love the journaling side of things. And I agree, they probably like doing it more old school. They like, writing in a journal or a diary. They like scrapbooking, not digitally, like, manually, not doing it online. They like that old school type stuff. I guess their brains are just wired to do things like that. And in this particular situation, that's great. I don't have a whole lot of problem with women traders, skitzing off the rails. It's always guys. And I think this journaling piece is a really, really good example.
Well, our entire trading psychology podcast is really built upon just a few key points. Number one, recognize, be self-aware of the things you don't do well. That's the biggest part of this entire journey that we've gone on for all of these episodes is, hey, here's a problem. Can you identify it in yourself? Can you really look inside yourself? Okay, is this a problem? If so, here's what you can do to fix it. Same thing here. Let's say you identify as, okay, I have ADD or ADHD, or I have something that is giving me a disadvantage in trading. Okay, the first thing you want to do is stop fighting it. Stop fighting it. If you have a hard time focusing, okay, don't try to change that about yourself. You'll never be successful doing it. Let's think about ways that you can focus on trading. And so you take the things that you are really interested in, that you probably hyper-focus on, put your time in that, and figure out ways that you can do all the other tasks with either some help from someone else, from technology, anything you can do to get that done. That's really the whole basis of our Trading Psychology podcast, is identify it and figure out how to fix it with creative ways, not just discipline.
And so that's a perfect lead into the solutions part of this episode. And these solutions are going to be maybe solutions you've heard before, maybe in the Smart Kid episode, because I really do think they apply. And as much as I would like to add in another one that we've never heard before, I think it would probably be disingenuous to do that, because I think these are the perfect solutions for the problem at hand. And the first one, Rob, is what we talked about before. And when it comes to building a system, I think a lot of people get stuck in the weeds, because even though they're probably interested in putting indicators together, for example, there's a certain level of focus that kind of has to be there. And if it's not, then the process is going to take a very long time and you're not going to get anywhere. So maybe just keep it really basic and then go trade with that. On demo, of course. I left that part out in the Smart Kid episode. I should have said that. But get your reps in and learn in real time the money management and trading psychology side with a totally half-assed system. And then you can do that in real time, and then off to the side, then you can play mad scientist and allow your brain to go in every direction it needs to go to, and find obscure indicators and put them together and try to find that secret sauce. All the while you're making money, because as Robb's Flat Earth Trading Society video showed, even a really super basic system, if done right from money management and psychology standpoints, is going to make money. That's the side benefit, though, is you getting those reps in and that experience and all that other intangible stuff that's really hard to put into words. It's just something you need to do. But at least you're doing it. You're not getting stuck in the weeds. You're not getting stuck in this whole mind jumble of things you need to do just to put a simple system together when the rest of the world's already done it and they're miles ahead of you because they're not overthinking it.
Patrick, I don't think I've ever said this before in any of our episodes. I know I know I tend to repeat myself a lot, but what always blew me away is people that spent all this time building a system, demo trading it, and then they went and live trade it, and they deviated. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, the point of trading it is to see if it actually works in real time. And for you to deviate from that system, like you just threw away months of work because you decided to not have a stop on that one, or on this one you decided to do something different. It never made sense to me of how someone could go through building a system and then blow the position management. It's because their objective was to make money. And the objective should have been prove that the system works.
It's because the psychology is different. Demo trading psychology is different than real money psychology, is different than funded psychology. They're three completely different things, and we can get a bunch of experience in one, but then when we get to the next level, we have no experience there, and we have to learn the same stupid mistakes over and over and over. And I really try hard through this podcast and through my videos to lessen this curve. But if you're wondering why it happens, I'm telling you, that's the reason why. I thought I was bulletproof by the time I got to Maverick. But I've told the story before. I almost traded my way out of Maverick. Why? Because I was worried about what you guys were thinking about me and my trading. Truth be told, you have almost 1,000 traders. You didn't really give a shit what I was doing. You did, but it's not like you were sitting there looking the whole time. But
we cared about your net results, not your day-to-day stuff. We could care less.
Yeah, and even if I knew that, it would have still wreaked havoc with me, because now you're on stage in front of other people. It's no longer just you. And that is a transition. It's hard to put into words. I've tried really hard on my videos, but that is your reasoning why. And maybe if you have something like ADD and your mind is constantly in hyperdrive like that, maybe it's accelerated. Maybe it's worse when these transitions happen. So the sooner you can come up with solutions, I think the better. Now, we came up with one, and that is just have a really basic system and just start using it and get those reps in. You need those reps anyway. The sooner you start, the better. That's going to get you caught up in a hurry. The other one, and we talked about this in the Smart Kid episode too, Rob, was maybe you should just automate. Maybe your brain is going in so many different directions and it's going so fast that trading, especially on a big stage, discretionary trading to where you're handling most of the levers, just isn't for you. And that's fine. You can use your big, crazy brain to build a big, wonderful system. But when it's time to put it in motion, you should just kind of let it do what it needs to do. And if automating it is the only way to keep your craziness out of it, well, then that is an option. Might not be the most optimal option in the world. We talked about this in an episode called Why Not Just Automate? But it can still be really, really good, Rob. I mean, you have a lot of traders at Maverick that have automated systems, and they do a great job, don't they?
They do, and I think this is just a great solution to an issue. And again, as I said earlier, all of us are going to have issues. ADD, ADHD, autism, whatever it is, we're all going to have our deficiencies. And the whole point of this podcast is to fix those deficiencies, thinking outside of the box of, I just got to be more disciplined. Stop doing that trick. Stop thinking that's going to fix anything. You are who you are, like it or not. So again, look for technology. As you just said, automate. Look for technology. Look for other people. So let's say you've got this great brain that's scattered. It's scattered, and you have a hard time focusing in on like the implementation. Go on to like Fiverr, or just go on to any trading forum and ask for help with coding. Like if, let's say you can't focus on coding, you just don't like it, you can't focus on it. Get someone else to do your coding for you. They code it, you test it, you send it back the changes you want. Get some help with technology, other people, because trying to do it through discipline is only going to lead you to failure, and then you're going to feel really bad about yourself. So again, use technology, use other people, be aware of the problem, all the things that we talk about to fix this.
But only use it as a last resort. If you know that you have a certain condition that just does not allow you to do this the way most people do it. And you've already given it a real go, and you're just still constantly frustrated for those reasons. At that point, you want to automate. Automation is not a catch-all solution for bad psychology. That was the main message we tried to get across in that automation episode. But it is definitely a solution and can be a very good one. At the end of the day, you just want to make money and make consistent money. And you can still have your cake and eat it too by letting the actual A to Z, step-by-step trading part become automatic, and then you still building a better mousetrap off to the side. This to me, if you really can't handle the actual trading part because your brain just can't focus in, or you're constantly having problems with this, it's a good way to go, man. I think you can still utilize all the benefits, and that's what it really comes down to with things like ADD, autism, Asperger's, is finding the things you're really good at, taking the things you're not good at and farming those out, whether it's automation or whether it's somebody else, and then quadrupling down on those things that you are uniquely set up to do really well.
I think in our automation video, we talked about this is not a binary thing. Either you automate or you don't. What we're really talking about is automation is you can automate 10% of your system. You can automate 4% of your system, 52% of your system. And what Patrick and I both said is we don't like 100% automation. The idea that, we just code it once and we never have to do anything again. That's a lie. But look, automation is just a way to take things you're not good at and make it systematic so you can work on the things that you're good at. So as Patrick said, we're all on the spectrum. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. Let's just be creative and actually think of real ways to fix these problems. Use other people, use automation, use anything you have at your disposal. But again, stop beating yourself up over it. It's really great when you can accept it and just work on solutions.
And that's it, man. These things can be heaven or hell depending on how you decide to play it. Because make no mistake, you have these little, quote, afflictions that people talk about. They can be absolute superpowers if you want them to be, and if you put them in the right slots. That's the one thing that really took me a long time to learn. I mentioned this in the Smart Kid episode we did before. So hopefully we can get you guys there a lot sooner than later. But on that note, thank you everybody from all ends of the spectrum joining us here on the Trading Psychology Podcast. Robb and I will both see you in the next episode.